In the rolling hills of Pennsylvania stands a French Gothic Revival mansion fit for a king, yet it became the sanctuary of a man who called himself God. Built in the 1890s by a wealthy industrialist, Woodmont would be transformed into the headquarters of Father Divine, a charismatic and controversial spiritual leader of the early 20th century. The unlikely convergence of Gilded Age opulence and utopian religious fervor makes the story of Woodmont one of the more fascinating chapters in American architectural history. Hi everyone, Ken here. Hit that subscribe button and let's explore this house. Father Divine's early life is shrouded in some mystery. The FBI later identified him as one George Baker, born in 1876, possibly in Maryland or Georgia, to parents who had been enslaved. What is clear, however, is that by 1912 he had begun preaching an unusual doctrine. He declared that he was God incarnate, the fulfillment of biblical prophecies of the Second Coming. This bold claim, coupled with his teachings, set him apart from other preachers of the time. Traveling through the American South, the young evangelist attracted a small following. He taught that all people were equal, no distinctions of race or gender, and urged his disciples to live pure, celibate lives free of smoking, drinking, and gambling. Such radical ideas did not always sit well with the local religious leaders. On at least 2 occasions, rival ministers had the man who would later be Father Divine arrested to try to silence him, but the seeds of his movement had been planted. In 1914, to escape hostility in the South, Father Divine moved north to New York City. In a cramped Brooklyn apartment, he and a handful of followers established their first communal household. It was during these Brooklyn years that he adopted the name Reverend Major Jealous Divine, which would later be shortened by followers to Father Divine, and around the same time he married his first wife, Penina. Many devotees relinquished their worldly possessions to the movement. Followers voluntarily turned over their savings and often even changed their own names as a sign of rebirth in the new faith. This communal pooling of resources would soon make Father Divine and his movement surprisingly wealthy. By 1919, Father Divine had outgrown the Brooklyn apartment. He moved the center of his activity to a large house in the predominantly white town of Sayville, Long Island. There, his movement truly began to flourish. Tensions in Sayville came to a head in 1931. That year, Father Divine hosted an unusually large gathering at his home, a joyful banquet and party for his followers, complete with music and feasting. Disturbed by the noise, or perhaps by the very idea of an integrated, celebratory crowd, the police raided the home and arrested Father Divine along with dozens of his followers on charges of disturbing the peace. At one hearing, he attempted to pay the bail and fines with a single $500 bill, an almost mythical banknote in that era, a dramatic flourish that left the authorities scrambling to make changes. Such stories made headlines and greatly raised Father Divine's public profile. No longer an obscure cult figure, he was becoming a household name. Around this time, his movement formally adopted a name, the International Peace Mission Movement. Shortly after, he relocated the heart of his movement to Harlem in New York City, where a large base of supporters already revered him. He presented himself as a modern-day savior in a time of despair, famously organizing free Holy Communion banquets that fed the poor, huge meals where all were welcome and no one had to pay. By the late 1930s, Father Divine presided over an empire of hotels, restaurants, and farms owned collectively by his followers. He insisted he personally owned nothing. In his theology, all wealth belonged to the communal kingdom of God on earth, but in practical terms, Father Divine lived like a man of means. He was often seen riding in a motorcade of luxurious, chauffeur-driven cars, Rolls-Royces, Cadillacs, and even Duesenbergs. In 1942, trouble with the law nudged Father Divine to move once again. A couple of disillusioned followers in New York sued to recover their life savings, and a judge ordered Father Divine to pay them back, an order he sidestepped by relocating his base to Philadelphia. In 1953, a devoted follower purchased a 72-acre estate called Woodmont, a once grand but now rundown mansion outside Philadelphia, and donated it to Father Divine as the movement's new headquarters. The estate, a castle-like mansion on a hill, was promptly rechristened by him as the Mount of the House of the Lord. Followers flocked to renovate Woodmont for their god, scrubbing and painting and furnishing the mansion to suit Father Divine's needs. They added a large American flag at the entrance, a show of Father Divine's strong patriotism, and formal gardens reminiscent of the movement's prior properties. In September 1953, Woodmont was unveiled to the public in a celebratory open house, welcoming neighbors and the curious to tour the beautiful grounds and mansion for the first time under Peace Mission ownership. Father Divine was around 80 years old, though he never did confirm his age when he moved into Woodmont. From this hilltop sanctuary, he led his movement in relative quiet for the next dozen years. Long before Father Divine arrived, Woodmont had its origins in the Gilded Age aristocracy. The mansion was commissioned by Allen Wood Jr., an industrialist scion of the prominent Wood family of Pennsylvania. Woodmont was constructed between 1891 and 1894 as Allen Wood Jr.'s dream home. He hired architect William Lightfoot Price, a talented Quaker designer, to create a mansion in the image of a French château. The result was a sprawling stone manor that originally sat on 400 acres of hilltop land, the highest point in Montgomery County. The estate, which reportedly cost over $1 million to build, an astronomical sum in the 1890s, was Allen Wood's statements of prestige and vision. Inside, Woodmont offered all the luxuries one could expect of a millionaire's residence in 1894. The Great Hall served as a magnificent reception room, complete with a massive fireplace and a balcony around the second level from which one could survey gatherings below. Rich wood paneling, ornate plasterwork, and imported marble were featured throughout the interior, though much of this would later give way to simpler decor under Father Divine, who preferred a more austere atmosphere. The mansion's footprint included numerous parlors, a formal dining room, a billiards room, and a library, plenty of space to entertain the elite of Philadelphia society. When Father Divine's peace mission acquired Woodmont in 1953, the property had shrunk to about 72 acres, but it was still a secluded oasis of greenery in suburban Philadelphia. The followers who moved in were impressed by the estate's bones, even if the mansion needed some refurbishing, and they took care to preserve its historic character both inside and out. The once fussy Victorian-era Great Hall had been stripped of its furnishings and sparsely decorated with more contemporary pieces. Though the walls were painted white, the defining architectural elements were left fully intact and repaired where needed. The great fireplace in the ingle nook was carefully cleaned from years of dirt and grime that had slowly accumulated all over it. The wood balustrade was carefully stained and polished, and new life was brought back into the old house. As for the dining room, it remained decorated in period detail and dined in often. The table was reportedly set every night as devotees sat down with Father Divine for shared meals. The great parlors, we can only imagine how they might have been decorated, but as for the architectural elements, well, all those remained frozen in time. Father Divine spent the last chapter of his long life at Woodmont. There he lived in semi-retirement, holding court for followers who came to seek blessings and advice at the estate. On September 10, 1965, he passed away quietly at Woodmont. Though newspapers ran with headlines that a man who claimed he would never die had passed away, grief-stricken followers maintained that Father Divine had not truly died at all, but had dismissed his spirit or achieved a new form of existence. Despite the dwindling of Father Divine's congregation, Woodmont remains impeccably preserved as both a historic site and a religious shrine. After Father Divine's entombment on the grounds, the estate took on a new sacred significance. His private rooms in the mansion were left exactly as they were at the moment of his passing. As of today, Woodmont continues to be owned by the International Peace Mission movement and is open to the public on a limited basis, offering a fascinating glimpse into both the Gilded Age and the peculiar spiritual movement that made its home there. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. What did you think about Woodmont, or perhaps something else stuck out to you? Either way, let me know down below in the comments section. And while you're there, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an exciting episode of This House.